Love Me in the Dark, written by Lovi Pola. Prologue. As the covers gradually glided down my body, I felt a gentle hand rest on the small of my back. The touch was incredibly warm, almost to the point of being scorching, as if the blood coursing through its veins raced faster than that of any ordinary man. If this were indeed the case, I wouldn't find it surprising. With a heavy heart, I reluctantly opened my eyes, only to be greeted by darkness, as always, whenever he paid me a visit. In these moments, a recurring pattern emerged, a fleeting instance of lucidity. It was a fleeting moment when my rational mind urged me to shut my eyes, part my lips, and sternly instruct him to depart. However, deep down, I knew that if I were to muster the courage to voice my desire for him to leave, he would oblige without uttering a single word. As silently as he appeared, he would vanish into the night, leaving me alone with my conflicting emotions. And he'd never come back. But this was the right thing to do, the smart thing to do, the sane thing to do. And I was thinking of doing it, honest to God, I was. I thought about doing it every time. Then I felt his weight hit the bed, his body stretching out beside mine. He turned me into him. I opened my mouth to speak, and before I could do the same thing, his mouth was on mine. And for the next 2 hours, I didn't think at all, but I felt. I felt a lot, and all of it was good. Hours later, the room remained shrouded in darkness as I observed the shifting silhouette of the man. Lying in bed, I quietly watched him glide about without making a sound, which struck me as rather peculiar. Apart from a faint rustling of his clothes, an encompassing silence enveloped his movements. Even as an indistinct figure, it was evident that he exuded an air of powerful and masculine grace, an aspect that struck me as unusual. Witnessing my enigmatic visitor donning his clothes was akin to observing a mesmerizing display of a badass, macho dance, or at least that's how it felt to me. Of course, such a comparison is not something one encounters every day, except in my bedroom when he paid his visits. Well, to be precise, when he prepared to depart. I was so captivated by the scene that I could have sold tickets to this enthralling display, but the thought of sharing this intimate experience with others gave me pause. Already, it seemed like I might have unwittingly shared these private moments with half of Denver, each of them getting their exclusive glimpse of our passionate encounters. The mere idea of it messed with my head, along with the fact that he kept coming back, and I willingly allowed him to do so, culminating in shared pleasure, followed by his own satisfaction. Often, like tonight, the cycle would repeat. To be honest, I wasn't exactly thrilled about the notion of sharing even more than I might already have. I closely observed his every move as he made his way to the bed, my senses heightened with anticipation. He leaned low, his hand generating a comforting heat on my knee, and his fingers curling around the back, while he placed a tender kiss on my hip, his lips delicately grazing my skin, sending tingles throughout my body. Then, with a swift motion, he pulled the covers up, revealing my waist as they cascaded down. I was mostly lying on my belly, partially on my side, with my arm bent, and my hand nestled under my face on the pillow. His body shifted in my direction, and his fingers slipped under my hair, gently pulling it back as his lips found their way to my ear. "See you later, babe," he murmured softly. "Later," I responded in hushed tones. Ever so slightly, he shifted his head, and his lips gently brushed against the skin at the back of my ear, followed by the tantalizing touch of his tongue. The sensation sent tingles coursing through my body, causing me to shiver with delight. He considerately pulled the covers up, ensuring I was cozily tucked in up to my shoulder. Then, with a swift and silent maneuver, he turned, and just like that, he was gone. Not a sound, not even the faintest creak of the door opening or closing. It was as if he had never been there in the first place. It's simply mind-boggling, utterly crazy. I gazed at my bedroom door for a while, my body feeling warm, content, and weary, but my mind didn't share the same sentiment. Turning onto my back, I wrapped the covers around my naked form and fixated my gaze on the ceiling above. The truth was, I didn't even know his name, which made me whisper to myself, God, I feel like such a slut. Chapter 1, Part 1. The next morning, I found myself sitting at my computer in my home office, feeling like I should be getting down to work. You see, I had 3 looming deadlines, and the truth was, I hadn't even made much progress on the tasks at hand. I work as a freelance editor, getting paid by the hour, so if I didn't put in those hours, well, no paycheck for me. And let's face it, I had my own mouth to feed, not to mention a body to clothe. My body had quite the fondness for all sorts of clothes, and it craved them, so I had to indulge that craving to keep everything smooth and trouble-free. Plus, there was my cosmopolitan addiction to consider, and as we all know, cosmos don't come cheap. And on top of all that, I had my house to think about. I was in the process of fixing it up, making it just right for me. So yeah, getting paid was pretty essential. But let's be honest, when I said I was fixing up my house, that wasn't entirely true. The truth was, my dad had chipped in and done some of the work, and my friend Troy had also lent a helping hand. So, I guess you could say I had a house that I was sweet-talking, begging, and maybe even emotionally blackmailing others into fixing up for me. Nonetheless, the fact remained that my house needed some serious TLC. Those cabinets and tiles I wanted didn't just magically appear and say, hey, Penelope Casey, we want to be a part of your home, so fix us to your walls. Nope, that was purely a wishful thought that only happened in fairy tales. That sort of thing only happened in my dreams, and let me tell you, I had plenty of them, most of which were just daydreams. Like at that very moment, while I sat at my computer with one heel propped on the seat, my chin resting on my knee, and my eyes gazing out the window, my mind wandered off to the mysterious stranger whom I affectionately referred to as the Great Miss. I couldn't help but indulge in a little daydream about our first meeting. In this imagined scenario, I was a whole lot smarter, funnier, and way more mysterious and alluring. My charming qualities would have him instantly hooked, dazzled by my sharp wit, my talent for engaging conversation, and my ability to delve into politics and global affairs with ease. Oh, and not to forget my humble tales of extensive charity work, all bundled up with irresistible looks that promised a lifetime of unforgettable experiences, even making him confess his undying love for me. Or at the very least, I hoped he'd reveal his name to me. But let's face it, instead of being any of those things, I was simply drunk, and not at all the impressive version of myself that I daydreamed about. The sound of my doorbell broke through my elaborate daydream, and I snapped back to reality just as things were starting to get interesting. With a sense of curiosity, I got up from my seat and strolled through my office into the upstairs hall, all the while reminding myself to give Troy a call. Once again, the doorbell needed fixing, and I had this brilliant idea of offering him a 6-pack and a homemade pizza in exchange for his handyman skills. But then, a not-so-appealing thought crept into my mind, bringing along his new girlfriend, who was nothing short of annoying, whiny, and constantly complaining. That changed my plans, and I decided it'd be better to give my dad a call. As I made my way down the stairs and ventured through my wide living room, I tried my best to ignore the chaos that surrounded me. My living room was like a display of fixer-upper decor, cluttered with dust rags, paint brushes, power tools, and a collection of not-so-powerful tools. Cans and tubes of practically everything added to the clutter, all of it haphazardly jumbled together and coated in a fine layer of dust. Surprisingly, I managed to navigate through the chaos without succumbing to the urge to clutch my hair with frustration or let out a scream of exasperation. Small wins, I'd call it, small wins of progress. I arrived at the entryway, marked by 2 narrow walls adorned with stunning stained glass. That stained glass was the beginning of my troubles, exactly 2 years ago. Approximately 6 months and 2 weeks before I crossed paths with my mysterious stranger, I took a single step into this chaotic and dilapidated house, caught sight of that captivating stained glass, and without hesitation, turned to the realtor, proclaiming, "I'll take it." The realtor's face instantly lit up with delight. As for my father, he hadn't even stepped inside yet, but his eyes sought solace in the heavens above, and he sent up a prayer that seemed to last an eternity. His subsequent lecture lasted even longer. But despite my father's sensible advice, I went ahead and bought the house anyway. As always, in hindsight, I really should have listened to my dad. Glancing out the narrow side window at the door, my heart sank as I saw Roxy, my sister's friend, standing there. Oh shoot, oh shoot, shoot, shoot. I couldn't stand Roxy, and the feeling was mutual. What on earth was she doing there? I peeked past her, scanning the area to check if my sister might be lurking or perhaps concealing herself in the shrubbery. With Peyton and Roxy, I wouldn't put it past them to surprise me, subdue me, and then ransack my house. In my more ominous daydreams, I often pictured this as a regular pastime for them. I had a strong hunch that this wasn't too far from the truth. No joke. Her eyes locked onto mine through the window, her face scrunching up in a way that could be considered pretty if she eased up on the black eyeliner and blush, not to mention using a lip liner that matched her lip gloss a bit better. As it was, the look didn't quite hit the mark. "I see you," she shouted, and I let out a sigh. Inevitably, I made my way to the door, because if I didn't, Roxy would make sure the whole neighborhood heard her. I quite liked my neighbors, and I'm pretty sure they didn't need a biker bitch from hell making a scene on my doorstep at 10:30 in the morning. I slowly opened the door, but not too wide, positioning myself between it and the jamb while keeping a firm grip on the handle. "Hey, Roxy," I greeted, mustering a friendly tone and feeling rather proud of my effort. But Roxy wasn't about to exchange pleasantries. Instead, she retorted, "Forget hey, is Peyton here?" See, that's exactly what I was talking about. Roxy totally spent her days causing chaos. I took a deep breath, making a conscious effort to keep my eyes from rolling. "No," I replied. Undeterred, Roxy issued her warning, "If she's in there, you better tell me." Then, she looked beyond me and unleashed a thunderous shout, "Peyton, bitch, if you're in there, you better come out here, right now." "Roxy," I snapped, trying to maintain some level of decorum, "keep your voice down." But Roxy seemed unfazed, craning her neck and bouncing on her toes as she continued to holler, "Peyton, Peyton, you crazy, stupid bitch, get your ass out here." I stepped out the door, gently pushing Roxy back before closing it behind me, and hissed, "Seriously, Roxy, you need to shut up. Peyton isn't here, and she's never here. You know that perfectly well, so stop yapping and get going." But Roxy wasn't about to back down. She shot back, "You shut up, and don't act all smart. You're helping her." She raised her hand, pointed her finger at me, and with a quick motion, she crooked her thumb, making a gunshot noise that puffed out her cheeks and caused her lips to vibrate. I would have admired her talent for making verbal sound effects, but the intense and dead serious look in her eyes sent a shiver down my spine. So, instead of praising her for the one real talent I suspected she had, I opted to whisper, "What?" In response, she dropped her hand, rising up on her motorcycle-booted toes to bring our gazes level. In a soft yet threatening voice, she said, "D dead. You and her, you don't get smart. You understand me?" Then, in a moment of utter foolishness, I posed a question that was asked repeatedly, and the answer was always the same yes. "Is Peyton in some kind of trouble?" I inquired, hoping against hope that maybe, just maybe, the response would differ this time. But as expected, Roxy gave me a look that implied I might have a screw loose. Without hesitation, she raised her hand, conjuring the all-too-familiar gun gesture, complete with the sound effect, her fingers seemingly pointed straight at my head. Following that dramatic display, she promptly turned on her heel and briskly made her way down my front steps. I remained planted on my porch, watching her departure. My mind wandered, almost unconsciously noting her attire. A tight tank top, an unzipped black leather motorcycle jacket, a short, frayed jean skirt which would have been deemed a crime in multiple states for various fashion and decency-related reasons, black fishnet stockings, and motorcycle boots. And all this while it was around 40 degrees outside, not even a scarf in sight. Yet, the remainder of my thoughts was entirely preoccupied with my sister and Roxy's unnerving sound effect. Shit, shit, shit. Chapter 1, Part 2. I drove my car, trying to convince myself that my current plan was a good one, but deep down, I knew my first plan was the right one. It involved calling my father right after Roxy left, but now I felt that the new plan was nothing but garbage. The reason I hesitated to involve my father was because he and his wife Lily had already disowned Peyton a while back. It happened shortly after they returned from their Jamaican vacation and lost all the island holiday bliss when they walked into their living room and caught sight of their daughter on her knees, head between the legs of a shirtless man with his jeans wide open. He was passed out, his head lolling on the back of the couch, while Peyton, in her drugged-up state, remained completely oblivious to the fact that her activities were getting her nowhere. And let me tell you, the state of their living room was a complete disaster, much like the rest of the house. As you can probably gather from this story, I was reluctant to bring my father into any situation involving Peyton, especially since this wasn't even the worst tale I had about her. It was just the final straw for Dad and Lily. They were currently enjoying a carefree and Peyton-free life, and I had no desire to disrupt that peace. Thus, I refrained from calling Dad. Instead, my thoughts turned to Peyton's boyfriend, Tank. As a member of a biker gang, Tank possessed a rugged exterior, embodying the very essence of toughness. Yet, despite his rough exterior, I had the chance to meet him, and surprisingly, I found myself rather fond of Tank. He had a great sense of humor and genuinely cared for my sister. In his presence, Peyton displayed a somewhat improved version of herself. Not a complete transformation, mind you, but at least she became more tolerable. Admittedly, Tank's past was likely marred with felonies, but here's the ironic twist. He happened to be a positive influence on Peyton, and such influences were exceedingly rare, almost non-existent, in fact during the last 25 years. Given the not-so-subtle hint from Roxy, Peyton's sole friend, that her current predicament was worse than the usual, I realized I had two tasks ahead of me. Firstly, I needed to take action to address Peyton's situation, and secondly, since we were talking about Peyton here, I thought it might be best to call in some reinforcements or, even better, lay the problem at their doorstep. Enter Tank. I hopped in my car and drove over to the auto supply store located on Broadway, where I managed to snag a parking spot on the street. Even before I got to know Tank and discovered that this store was probably a front for some shady biker gang activities, I was already familiar with it. The store was called Drive, and I had frequented it quite a bit, mainly because I could find an excuse to shop just about anywhere. But Drive was pretty awesome. They had some seriously cool stuff in there. I even purchased my windshield wiper fluid from there. Last year, I bought new car mats, and let me tell you, they were the bomb. Supreme car mats, the best I'd ever had. Now, I must admit that back in my 20s, during one of my many phases, I was trying to pimp my ride. So, you know what I did? I went to Drive and got myself a fluffy pink steering wheel cover. Everybody in town knew that Drive had a triple-bayed garage in the back, but it wasn't your typical garage for regular cars and motorcycles. Oh no, it was exclusively reserved for the assembly of custom-built cars and motorcycles, and let me tell you, these creations were the epitome of coolness. In fact, Drive's reputation reached far beyond our little town. It was world famous. People from all over the globe sought their services, and no wonder why they crafted automotive and bike masterpieces that would make your jaw drop. I once stumbled upon an article in 50 to 80 magazine that showcased this remarkable place. Reading it, I learned that even movie stars and renowned celebrities couldn't resist the allure of Drive's offerings. They lined up to purchase their fantastic cars and bikes, and I must admit, just looking at the pictures made me yearn for one too. Alas, my bank account didn't boast hundreds of thousands of dollars, so that dream was currently residing a bit further down on my list of things I want. It sat right under a luxurious Tiffany's diamond bracelet, and directly under that, a pair of those stunning Jimmy Choo shoes that I simply couldn't get out of my head. One can only hope, right? I parked my car and strolled down the sidewalk toward Drive, hoping my outfit was up to snuff. I had fashioned my hair into a girlish ponytail, tied up at the top back of my head. For attire, I chose a pair of low-rider jeans, along with some low-heeled boots that had a biker vibe. And of course, I donned my biker jacket, although it wasn't quite like Roxy's. Mine was a distressed tan leather, with some fancy quilting around the high waist area, and it boasted a cozy lining of short, warm fur. But the unique feature was the 6-inch tuft of fluffy fur at the sleeves. I personally found it super cool, and the deal I snagged on that jacket was nothing short of red hot. However, there was a tiny bit of uncertainty gnawing at me regarding the fluffy fur. I mean, I didn't think bikers were overly concerned with animal rights, but I couldn't help wondering if they might take it as an affront to their brotherhood. There was this tiny fear that they might decide to garrote me or something. But hey, you know what they say, nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, with a deep breath and a pinch of courage, I ventured forth into Drive, hoping that my outfit would blend well with the biker ambience and that I wouldn't be met with any unexpected surprises. Taking a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and confidently entered the vast, cavernous store. My gaze immediately fixed on the long counter at the front, where a solitary cash register stood, despite the fact that this place could often get jam-packed with customers. Since I didn't have Tank's cell phone number, my primary objective was to inquire if anyone at Drive knew how I could reach him. I didn't exactly anticipate coming face to face with Tank, the towering, brawny, and fully tattooed guy with long, flowing blonde hair standing on the other side of the counter. On his side, there was another burly biker dude, 3 more on the outside, and to my surprise, all eyes turned toward me the moment I stepped inside. "Hey Tank," I called out, plastering a friendly smile on my face as I confidently approached the counter. However, my enthusiasm faltered when I noticed his piercing gaze zeroing in on me, and to put it mildly, he did not seem pleased at all. "Uh-oh," I thought, sensing that trouble might be brewing. His eyes narrowed and his expression hardly concealed the fact that he was seriously ticked off with me for reasons I couldn't quite fathom. "Do not shit me," he growled, causing a spike of anxiety to shoot through me. In that split second, I tried my best to recall the limited self-defense moves I had picked up during a mere half-hour class. Realizing that silence and immobility were probably not my best tactics, I mustered the courage to respond. "I'm not shitting you," I said sincerely, because it was the truth. I hadn't come there with any malicious intent or ulterior motive. It was all just a simple misunderstanding, or so I hoped. His eyebrows shot up in surprise. "That cunt sent you," he exclaimed, using a word that wasn't exactly a favorite in polite company. I figured that in the world of biker club land, such language might be more commonplace, but it still spoke volumes about his level of irritation. Before I could even get a word in, Tank spoke up again. "She sent you. Jesus, Pen. Consider this your one warning, woman. Get your head out of your ass, turn that sweet tail of yours, and get Uda here." Despite feeling a bit intimidated, I couldn't help but notice that Tank found my appearance somewhat attractive, at least if his sweet tail comment was anything to go by. Nonetheless, I needed to stay focused on the task at hand, so I took a deep breath and tried to advance toward him. However, it became evident that my presence was putting all the bikers on high alert, and that's when I decided to pause in my tracks. Then I spoke up, trying to clarify the situation to Tank. "Peyton didn't send me." In response, Tank insisted, "I'm being cool with you, babe, just go." "No, seriously, she didn't," I insisted. I went on to explain, "Roxy showed up at my place this morning and she totally freaked me out." "She did this," I said, lifting my hand and attempting to mimic the gun gesture with the sound effect, even though I knew my attempt was far from perfect. "She seemed dead serious, so I thought it best to check in with you to make sure Peyton is okay." "Peyton is not okay," Tank replied without a moment's hesitation. "Peyton is far from okay." I closed my eyes and let out a deep sigh. I was pretty adept at sighing, considering that my sister's antics often drove me to exasperation, giving me plenty of practice. Finally, I opened my eyes and continued, "I take it you two aren't together anymore," I surmised, hoping to understand the situation better. "No, babe, we are not together anymore," Tank confirmed, and I couldn't help but feel a twinge of disappointment. Curious, I inquired further, "What did she do this time?" "You don't want to know," Tank replied, his tone sounding guarded and almost resigned. Concerned, I pressed on, "Are the police after her?" "Probably," he replied with a hint of weariness in his voice. I studied him for a moment, then asked another question, "But that's not the main reason she's in trouble, is it?" "Peyton's got all kinds of trouble, babe, but if the cops are after her, that's the least of her worries," Tank explained matter-of-factly. "Oh boy," I whispered, feeling a growing sense of unease. "That's about right," Tank agreed, and as I turned to see what he was looking at, I heard a deep, gravelly voice inquire, "Who's this?" Then, my eyes fell upon him, and I have to admit, I wasn't typically into biker dudes, but let me tell you, this guy could seriously make me take a turn to the Harley side. He stood tall and broad, with a ripped physique that left no room for any ish about either of those traits. Moreover, his arms and neck were adorned with a plethora of tattoos that instantly piqued my curiosity. I found myself yearning to examine them up close, meticulously cataloging each one, and perhaps even writing books about them. That's how fascinating they were. His hair was a mix of salt and pepper, but truth be told, it leaned heavily towards the black pepper side, and it had a slight wave that added to his overall charm. The same could be said for his salt and pepper goatee, which hung a bit long at his chin in that cool biker way that just screamed awesomeness. Additionally, he sported a couple of days' worth of stubble on his cheeks, which somehow managed to look incredibly attractive on him. But what truly caught my attention were the pale spikes radiating in his tan skin around his intense blue eyes. There are only two words that can aptly describe all that was him: biker yummy. "Hey," I whispered, feeling a shiver run through my entire body as his gaze shifted from Tank to me. Then those intense blue eyes did a body scan, and another shiver coursed through me. Our eyes locked, and his gravelly voice growled, "Hey." And there it was again, another shiver. Yowza. The attraction was undeniable. "Steele, she's cool. She's with me," Tank asserted, causing my body to jerk in surprise. I turned to him puzzled, as he quickly made his way around the counter and headed in my direction. "I am?" I questioned, seeking clarity, but Tank's intense gaze made it clear that he wanted me to keep quiet. So, I heeded his silent command and turned back to Biker Hottie. "Sheila know about her?" Biker Hottie inquired, and I glanced at Tank, still trying to make sense of the situation. "Sheila? How many bitches you need?" Biker Hottie added with a hint of teasing in his tone. "She's not my woman, brother. She's a friend. She's cool," Tank replied, setting the record straight. "All right, so who is she?" Biker Hottie, or rather Steele, pressed on, clearly intrigued by my presence. "Her name's Penelope," Tank replied, and as Steele's gaze landed on me, I couldn't help but freeze in place. Then, I watched in awe as his lips formed my name softly. Penelope. Yet another shiver ran through me. I had always found my name rather appealing, thinking it was pretty, but the way Steele said it made me freaking love it. Curiosity got the better of him, and Steele inquired directly, "So, who are you, Pen?" I hesitated, feeling a bit flustered. I'm a friend of Tank's," I responded. "We established that, darlin'," Steele informed me, his voice carrying a commanding tone. "How do you know my boy here?" Quickly, Tank chimed in, "She's Peyton's sister." Upon hearing that, Steele's entire powerfully built frame tensed up, and the atmosphere around him became charged with intensity. It was so unnerving that I found myself momentarily forgetting how to breathe. "Tell me she's here to drop the money, brother," Steele whispered in a voice that was equally as intimidating as the way he held himself, if not more so. "Peyton and she aren't close," Tank clarified. "I'm telling you, she's cool, and she's a good person." "She's blood of the enemy, Tank," Steele murmured. My heart skipped a beat. Oh, this was not good. I definitely didn't want to be seen as an enemy, not by anyone, and most certainly not by this guy. He may be attractive, but he was also incredibly intimidating. It was time to get to the bottom of things, and quickly. I needed to sort this out, pronto. I took my purse off my shoulder, unzipped it, and began to rummage through it while muttering to myself about Peyton. "Peyton, a pain in my ass. She's been a pain in my ass ever since she cut off all the hair on my Barbies. She was only 3, and I was too old for Barbies, but they were mine. Couldn't she leave them alone? What's with cutting their hair?" I glanced up at Tank and continued, "I think that's what psychos do." "We should have known then. She's 3, wielding scissors, causing mayhem, and breaking hearts." I kept on blabbering as I searched my purse, finally finding my checkbook. But of course, I still had to find a pen too, so I kept digging and exclaimed, "She was always, always a bad seed." With my checkbook now in hand, I flipped it open, clicked my pen smartly, put the point to the check, and then I looked up at Steele. "All right, how much does she owe you?" I asked, feeling quite annoyed about having to bail out Peyton again, especially when it involved money and angry bikers. It was at this moment that I noticed Steele was no longer wearing a scary expression. Instead, he was looking at me like he wanted to laugh, and I have to say, it was a good look on him. I didn't want to be mesmerized by his good looks, not by his expressions, or the entirety of him. The hair, tattoos, and that sculpted body. All I craved was to head back home, whip up a batch of cookie dough, and devour it in peace. Well, I snapped impatiently. $2,357,107, Steele replied casually, causing my jaw to drop in utter shock. His quick flash of a white smile, framed by the dark goatee, dazedly registered in some distant part of my brain, and then he added, "and 12 cents. Oh my God, I murmured, feeling completely overwhelmed. Despite my astonishment, Steele was still smiling when he glanced down at my checkbook. "Think you can fit that on one line, Peaches?" he teased. Oh my God, I repeated, the situation feeling almost too surreal to process. "Need some mouth-to-mouth?" Steele inquired, leaning in, but I instinctively took a step back, closed my lips tightly, and shook my head. "Shame," he muttered, leaning back. "My sister owes you over $2 million? I whispered in disbelief. "Yep," Steele replied nonchalantly. "Over $2 million? I repeated, just to make sure I heard it right. "Yep," Steele confirmed. "Are you sure there's no accounting mistake?" I asked, trying to hold onto a glimmer of hope. Steele's smile grew wider, his teeth gleaming white against his tan skin. Then he crossed his imposing, tattooed arms over his muscular chest and shook his head. "Maybe it's some foreign currency you're using, like pesos," I suggested, trying to come up with any possible explanation for the staggering amount. "Nope," Steele replied, putting any hope of it being a currency mix-up to rest. "I don't have that kind of money," I informed him, stating the obvious. "Sweet jacket, Peaches, but I was guessing that," he responded, complimenting my jacket while acknowledging my financial limitations. Well, at least the fluffy fur on my jacket didn't seem to turn him off. However, the grim reality remained that my sister owed him over $2 million. "I think it'll take me a while to raise that kind of cash," I explained, and then added with a touch of resignation, "maybe eternity." "Don't have eternity to wait, darlin'," he said, still grinning so widely that if he burst out laughing, it wouldn't surprise me. "I figured," I muttered, clicking my pen, snapping shut my checkbook, and stuffing both back into my purse as I felt my mind start to whirl. I mean, it's only natural to lose your mind when there's a specific reason for it, and that reason happened to have a name, Peyton Elizabeth Casey. I looked up at Tank, feeling an overwhelming need to vent my frustration, and I demanded answers. "Why me? Seriously, why? I'm just innocently born into this world, and then, 7 years later, zap, God curses me with the sister from hell. Is it too much to ask for a sister who giggles with you and shares makeup secrets? Or how about a sister who stumbles upon a great sale and immediately calls you to let you in on it? And even better, she scours the racks, stashing great deals that she knows would look hot on you, so you get the chance to grab them before anyone else does. Is it too much to ask for a sister who comes over to watch the modern Hawaii Five-0 with you, just so you both can indulge in perving on Steve McGarrett and fantasizing about having a Jewel sorrow? Is it? I ended my rant on a shout, feeling the need to release all my pent-up frustration. "Listen, Pen babe, I think you need to calm down," Tank muttered, and I could almost see the concern etched on his face as he pondered whether knocking me out might be for my own good. "Calm," I yelled. "Calm," I yelled again, my emotions getting the best of me. I continued to vent. "She owes you guys over $2 million. She's the one who cut the hair off my Barbies, and she stole the lavalier my grandmother gave me on her deathbed, only to pawn it to buy pot. And let's not forget how she got drunk and stuck her hand down my boyfriend's pants during Thanksgiving dinner. He was a straight-laced guy, went to church and all, but after Peyton's antics and that hand down the pants was just the climax of it all, he thought my family was insane, possibly criminally insane, and he broke up with me a week later. He might have been boring, looking back, but at the time, I liked him. He was my boyfriend. Now I was shrieking, my frustration reaching its peak. Peaches, Steele called out, and my body immediately swung toward him, realizing that he had moved closer into my space. I tilted my head back and snapped out a response, "What?" His hand gently wrapped around my neck, pulling me closer as he leaned in and whispered, "Baby, calm down." I found myself staring deeply into his captivating blue eyes, and strangely enough, his words had an immediate soothing effect on me. "Okie dokie," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper, my body responding to his calming presence. His eyes crinkled with a smile, and yet another shiver ran through me. With his hand still firmly around my neck, I was well aware that he could feel the tremor running through my body. His fingers tightened slightly, and something in his eyes shifted, making me shiver in a way he couldn't see but I could certainly feel. It was intense. I knew it was time to make my exit. I'd probably have to sell plasma and a kidney, but I doubt that would be enough. "So, can I just leave my sister to deal with this?" I asked politely, eager to escape the intensity of his grip but also apprehensive about making any sudden moves. "No one's going to harm you because of Peyton," he said softly. "Okay," I replied, feeling reassured by his words, "or anyone else, for that matter," he added. I mumbled, feeling a bit uneasy. "Okay, I said this because I definitely didn't want anyone causing harm to me, whether it's because of Peyton or for any other reason. I was really not up for that kind of trouble." His fingers tightened around my neck, lifting me slightly so I was almost on my toes, and his face came closer, way closer, too close. It sent a shiver down my spine. "I don't think you fully grasp what I'm telling you," he continued speaking softly. "If this Peyton situation escalates and you come into the spotlight, you won't hesitate to mention my name, right?" Oh no, this didn't bode well. It seemed even worse than owing a biker gang a whopping $2 million, and let me tell you, there weren't many things that could top that. But of course, if there were, Peyton would undoubtedly uncover them. If you're asking if I understand you, like yeah, I get you, then no, I don't get you," I answered him honestly because with Steele, it seemed like honesty was the best policy. "All right, Peaches, what I'm trying to say is, if you find yourself in a tricky situation, just mention my name. That means protection. Do you get me now?" he explained, his voice firm and serious. "Your sister has caused trouble everywhere she's been, whether she lived there or not, and you walked in here with no clue about any of it. So don't blunder into another situation, because others," he paused, choosing his words carefully, "they might not find you as adorable as I do." "Okay," I whispered, feeling both flattered that he found me cute and regretful that I didn't follow my initial plan of calling my father or hopping on a plane to France. "If I, have to use your name, what does that mean?" "It means you owe me," he replied, flashing a grin but avoiding a direct answer. Oh boy, this was getting interesting. "What do I owe you?" I pressed for clarity. "I'll have to get on my bike and come to your rescue, and we'll discuss the details later," he said with a wider grin. "I'm sure I'll be fine," I assured him, trying to muster confidence and saying a short prayer in hopes that my reassurance would hold true. His grin grew even bigger. Then, he finally released his grip on me but quickly took my purse off my arm. Before I could even react, he began rummaging through it. I chose not to protest and allowed him to continue, considering he had already touched me and I wasn't entirely sure how I'd react if he did so again. One thing was certain, I had a strong inkling that jumping his bones would be high up on the list of possibilities. I also realized that he could easily overpower me to take my purse, so I decided to let him take whatever he wanted. Even my best lip gloss in there was fair game, and if he wanted to give it to one of his ladies, I was more than willing to let it go. As he emerged from my purse with my cell phone in hand, he deftly flipped it open, pressed some buttons, and then closed it before placing it back inside. Then, with a sly smile, he returned the purse to my arm. "You have my number, darling. If you need it, feel free to use it. And even if you don't need it, but still want to use it, don't hesitate. Do you understand that?" he asked. I adjusted my purse higher on my shoulder and nodded in agreement. I understood perfectly well. He found me cute. Suppressing another shiver, I managed to whisper, "Nice to meet you too, Pen." "Yeah," I whispered back. Later, I turned to find Tank grinning down at me, and I replied, "Later." "Later, babe," Tank responded, making it sound like he'd genuinely see me again later, which in turn made me have to fight back another shiver. As I faced the silent biker boys behind me, witnessing all of them smiling, I couldn't help but find this scarier than their usual intimidating demeanor. I raised my hand and called out, "Later." After receiving a few chin lifts and a simple "later, darlin'," I wasted no time and made a quick exit from the place.